let's change the tone, the pace, the pitch, and let's just relax with some movie talk, because to Thursday being the day where you start to go, do you know what, I might go and see something this weekend, and it gives you a perfect opportunity just to tee it up and maybe go home to your other half and say, listen, we are going to see that. You're going to go and see something on the advice of James Luckford, our movie reviewer on this evening. Evening, fella.
Evening.
How is the world of movies looking? Because we're tapering off towards the end of the summer blockbuster now, aren't we?
We really are, and I think September can be a bit of a dull month in terms of you're looking at sort of February and September in the UK is when it's the films that perhaps they don't have too much faith in that are parked there, and but there are a few promising movies coming up, including the ones we're about to talk about. And
I've seen a little bit of online sort of bluster about this, if you like. This is a little room where a few independent movies get a chance to get made, and a lot of those independent movies, February and September, do have Oscar success. It's kind of allowing them to put their head above the parapet a bit there.
Yeah, a little bit. We're going to talk about the Souvenir coming up this week, but there's these smaller movies. I think you're more likely to see the real Oscar contenders coming sort of October to December, things like Judy, things that like Won't You Be My Neighbour, or A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood, sorry. And but this is the beginning of those smaller movies poking through. Maybe everyone's a little fed up with superheroes. Some people aren't, but
we will get to talk about that in the next few minutes. Right, the first one, Mrs Lowry and Son, a drama about the relationship between the painter L.S. Lowry and his mother, Vanessa Redgrave, and the phenomenal Timothy Spall, who looks really, really different in this, doesn't he?
Yes, he's lost a lot of weight. He purposefully, couple of years ago, lost a lot of weight because he found it was sort of he was getting typecast as kind of that big jovial kind of sidekick in, if you remember him, things like Sweeney Todd. Really interesting film. Just talks about, as you say, the relationship between Lowry, the painter, and his mother, who's quite controlling, quite domineering, quite afraid of him leaving, and really how he was sort of unappreciated really for a lot of his career.
I stumbled upon this being made, actually, weirdly. I was up in Manchester because the Lowry Shopping Centre and I believe the Lowry Hotel are both named after the aforementioned L.S. Lowry. And I remember seeing Timothy Spall, and I'd met Timothy Spall years ago at some acting thing I used to do, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that Timothy Spall has shrunk, because obviously he lost all the weight. He looks terrific, fair play to him. And I watched a little bit of it sort of happen in the kerfuffle as well.
Wow.
It's an important movie from a British arts perspective as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and interesting given that Spall also played Turner in Mr. Turner, so he's got a thing for playing great British artists. To me, this feels a bit more like a play than a movie. It is mostly them talking. However, it is Vanessa Redgrave, it is Timothy Spall. They're both amazing, and to watch them even just talk is a real pleasure.
What would I enjoy if I enjoy this?
I think something like Red Joan with Judi Dench, or maybe Mr. Turner as well. Kind of slightly more sedate dramas. If you're fed up of the explosions of the summer, if you want something that makes you think a little bit more about art, about relationships, this is really good. Okay,
I don't know much about the second movie, The Souvenir, drama about the filmmaker who enters a tense relationship with an older man.
Honor Swinton Byrne, I believe, the daughter of Tilda Swinton, who's also in this film, plays a filmmaker who falls in love with an older man, played by Tom Burke, who you may remember, I think, from The Three Musketeers, and it's a chart of the relationship which sort of begins to crumble, and it's exactly the sort of movie we were talking about before, this kind of slightly edgier, more thoughtful drama, tremendously acted. Tilda Swinton is in the film as well, as I said, and has a wonderful, as you would imagine, on-screen relationship with her daughter, on-screen sort of chemistry, and I just think when you've got a really well-acted film, a really well-written film, it's just a real pleasure to watch.
So when I look at the movies that have, let's just say, a massive age gap between the two protagonists, if I look at, let's just say, Mrs. Robinson or Leon, are we falling between those two stools, or are we somewhere completely different?
No, it's not sort of decades older, but it is established he is an older man, he's a more experienced man, and she is sort of, I think, early 20s and sort of just starting out in the world. So I suppose those gaps are a lot bigger in terms of experience rather than years, and it's just an examination of a relationship that is sort of going the wrong way, perhaps, and becomes quite toxic, and I think that's quite fascinating.
I think both movies, The Souvenir and Mrs Lowry and Son, both British movies, British directors, British stars as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see. Often we are kind of the background for big movies like Star Wars and Marvel. It's wonderful to see original movies and interesting movies. Joanna Hogg, the director of The Souvenir, is a very talented filmmaker, and it's just wonderful to see these films getting a real go in our cinemas.
Right, we thought we'd get away without any superhero talk, but we're going to do it nonetheless. DVD Avengers Endgame, the conclusion to Marvel's Infinity Saga and the highest grossing film of all time. Now, I have not seen a single Marvel movie since Iron Man 2.
Goodness.
So I don't know how they passed me by, right? Basically because I cannot be bothered queuing up for stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I haven't watched any Ant-Mans. I haven't watched... Oh, sorry, I watched one of the new Spider-Men.
Okay.
That's the plural of Spider-Man movies. And everybody I know says, no, stop. Do not watch Endgame until you catch up.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's a hell of an ask. It's, I think, 22 movies from Iron Man to Endgame. This is what it's all led to. In the Infinity War last year, Thanos devastated the world, and this is about their last stand. And I think you can... they're not enormously sophisticated films. I think if you were to watch it, you wouldn't be completely lost. But it's about... following the conclusion of this decade-long overarching storyline, and in some cases, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler because a lot of people have seen it.
I'm putting fingers in my ears, so I don't know. Go say your thing.
Perhaps saying goodbye to one or two people you've spent a lot of time with. So very emotionally impactful if you have seen the film.
Okay, very quickly, if I was going to see one thing this weekend and it includes a DVD, which one would you recommend?
I would go and see The Souvenir, a really good, independent, well-acted British film.
Go and see it. Tilda Swinton and her daughter in that as well. James Luxford, thank you very much for coming in. Great to see you.
Thank you.
BBC Coventry and Warwickshire Travel.
Right, let's get the latest travel with Erica Dancer.